We've been sort of on this theme with Dr. John Braccio, ADHD, and we're going to continue on with that today. It's multifaceted, and it's good to. I think ADHD affects so many people. Now that we've been talking about it, I've been looking into it. I can name a number of people, and I think all of us at some point have a little bit of it. ADHD. Let's talk about depression as well and how it all fits together. Dr. John Braccio, Regional Psychological Services. Hey, what's up, Doc? Good morning.
Well, good morning, Mike. Good talk to you, my friend. Last week we discussed when ADHD and anxiety coexist together. Well, today we discuss when ADHD and depression coexist together. Anxiety and depression are really two separate conditions that often overlap and coexist together. Persons with ADHD can have the comorbid or the coexisting condition of depression up to 30 or more percent of the time. So these really are not unusual in terms of them coexisting. It is sometimes hard to delineate which is the condition because the characteristics of lack of focus, procrastination, and inability to complete activities are common with both conditions. The ADHD characteristics can lead to low self-esteem, problems at work, problems in school, and difficulties in relationships that can lead to depression. And really, differences of depression from ADHD would include sadness, very poor self-esteem, sluggishness, hopelessness, worthlessness, and suicide ideation. The characteristics that really do relate to depression. It is important to determine if both conditions do exist. In a comprehensive psychological evaluation, it will be determined by an expert if a person has ADHD, depression, or some combination of the two. It's really important, Mike, to have appropriate diagnosis because the medications and treatment for both can be quite different. ADHD over an extended period of time can lead to depression because of the constant turmoil in the person's mind and some combination of the symptoms of lack of focus, inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and procrastination. They can just wear a person down emotionally and have them develop depressive symptoms of poor self-esteem, sadness, and a feeling that life is a burden and difficult for them to go on. So really the characteristics of ADHD can definitely lead to a person having depression or certainly making tendencies for depression much stronger. An additional problem that can occur is that the stimulant medications, when we think of Adderall as an example, that are often prescribed for ADHD sometimes can cause a person to have difficulties getting enough sleep. And this can lead to not just irritability, but feelings of hopelessness because of the inability to feel rested and do what they feel they have to do in their lives, because it can be pretty difficult if you can't sleep, and that sometimes can occur with Adderall. So if this occurs, it's critical that appropriate medication be in place. The combination of medication and cognitive behavioral therapy have been found to be the most helpful to treat persons that have ADHD and depression. So as we talked last week, when you have ADHD and anxiety, that can certainly cause a lot of havoc to a person emotionally. But if you have depression with ADHD, it can certainly cause a lot of problems also. And because you do have different medications for them, it is important that you determine if you have both or if you have one. So these get important in the diagnostic process and someone being aware of what the characteristics are of these two conditions.
ADHD, well, depression and anxiety sound almost exactly alike to me. I'm still trying to figure out what the difference is.
Well, I can indicate that to you. The ADHD is something that's often in place all the time. It doesn't matter what the condition, what's going on. You can have lack focus if you're doing anything, even watching a movie, you don't focus on it, reading a book, just being out with people in conversations, where anxiety usually has a cause or something that relates to it. You can have generalized anxiety where you're having almost everything, but generally it relates to something. It could be a fear of elevators. It could be a fear of interacting with people. It could be a fear of whatever it might be. And so they tend to be issue related, whereas the ADHD tends to be much more broad pace and all the time. Mind going 100 miles an hour, if you will.
Got it.
Where now, and if we're looking at depression, I mean, if this is what really weighs a person down, where you think there's 1,000-pound weight on you, and if you're having these problems with focus and problems in relationships, problems at work because of ADHD, that can certainly lead to feelings of hopelessness or feeling of sadness or being depressed. So all these do interact with each other. I think the anxiety and the ADHD seem to have more characteristics in common that are easy to see, but the impact of ADHD can certainly negatively impact a person that there can actually be a cause of depression. And if a person has depression, just as it, whether it's chemically or environmentally, you add the ADHD characteristics of the lack of function, the inattention, lack of focus, hyperactivity, impulsivity, all these things, procrastination, these can clearly lead to a person really feeling overwhelmed. So it can be a tough road to hoe, if you will.
Well, just staying with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, because we always say ADHD and then we forget what exactly we're talking about. ADHD. If you take away anxiety and depression out of that equation, do you get a genius?
Well,
I'm just serious. So think about it.
Well,
I mean, your mind is racing. You come up with all these cool ideas, and I don't know.
The key would be the person has to learn how to channel these particular characteristics, and because you do have three. If there are three characteristics under ADHD, three diagnoses. One is predominantly inattentive, the other is predominantly hyperactive, impulsive, and the third is a combination of the two. If a person is able to channel, and actually on our website we have a podcast specifically on the advantages of ADHD. If you can harness the ADHD, because there's so much energy a person has often, and they think divergently, meaning they can look at things in different ways because of the mind going off in so many different directions. If it can be contained, then a person can be very successful. I don't think be a genius necessarily, but they can be successful. And a lot of people with ADHD characteristics are successful because of this ability to also do divergent thinking, the ability to look at things in many different ways. But the problem is, too often, the mind is not controlled. It's like riding a horse, a wild horse, which is obviously, even though I haven't done it, I've heard it's a very difficult thing to do. So if a person can channel this energy, and often extra energy compared to what we'll call the average person, then a person can have a lot of success because they often don't need as much sleep. They often have their mind, because when they do focus on something, they can really focus for long periods of time because they need more of, call it, incentive. But once they find it, because really, I have a lot of these characteristics, and a lot of people do, and if you can control them, they can lead. Actually, believe it or not, it sounds like a funny thing to say, it can be a very positive set of traits if you do have these traits, if you can contain them and control them. Because if your mind's going 100 different miles an hour, and which most people are not, and you can somehow channel and focus that, which, by the way, often can be helped with the stimulant medications. It doesn't make sense, but when you think about putting a stimulant with someone who seems highly stimulated, but it can help the person be able to focus at a level that can have them focus much better, in life. Not that that's the only medication that can help persons with ADHD, but if you can channel the energies that you have, then you can be enormously successful. But if you have depression, then you have anxiety on top of that. All three of these can be together. It can really slow down a person dramatically and definitely impact their ability to focus, to be able to focus on their job and relationships. It can be difficult.
It's an interesting study, ADHD, and I wonder sometime if the anxiety and or depression comes from a frustration level. If someone who maybe has harnessed their ADHD, but then I can't focus, I can't get that done, I wanted to get that finished, and then comes the anxiety over that. But we're up on time. Doc,
did I tell you about the bingo, my friend?
Let's keep talking about this. This is interesting to me. I always wondered. I've never been diagnosed. I always wondered though. I fit a lot of these things you've been talking about, and I go, whoa. I'm not a depressed person though. I don't have anxiety, so I don't know. We'll move on. Dr. John Braccio, Regional Psychological Services. Find their podcast on this too over on their website. It's drjohnb.com still, isn't it?
It sure is, my friend. Very good.
All right. Have a great day. We'll talk next week.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
See ya. 1320 WILS. Mike Austin back in a minute.